Here's what's coming up on the world today. French President Emmanuel Macron says there is communication between government and union on pension reform. It's currently underway. United Arab Emirates President Sheikh Mohammed appoints his eldest son as Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi. And faithful pray for Pope Francis's speedy recovery as he is in hospital for respiratory infection. Hello and welcome to the program today. I'm Anne Nwawadu. We begin with sad news and multiple deaths are thought to have resulted after 2 U.S. Army helicopters crashed during routine training in southwestern Kentucky. Kentucky State Police says authorities received reports of an aircraft accident in the Trigg County just before 10 p.m. local time. And police called on the scene of the crash found wreckage of 2 military Black Hawk helicopters. The governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear, has said the crash is believed to have caused deaths and the cause is still under investigation.
Kentucky State Police Post 1 received a report shortly before 10 p.m. on March 29th of an aircraft incident here in Trigg County. Troopers responded to the area and came across the wreckage of 2 military Black Hawks. We have been working in conjunction with the United States military to assess this scene. And we continue to assess it as the morning. We cannot confirm any information as far as the crew or their condition at this time. The crash occurred in a field, some wooded area, but primarily a field area. At this time, there are no reports of resident damage. We do have a perimeter set up around the debris field. Residences need to leave. They can leave the area. If they find any debris, they can report that to Kentucky State Police Post 1 by calling our dispatch.
Confirmed that Pope Francis' health is improving after he was taken to hospital for a respiratory condition. The Pontiff was admitted to Gemelli Hospital in Rome after what was initially said to have been a scheduled checkup. His latest hospitalization is coming ahead of the Palm Sunday service on April the 2nd that makes the start of the hectic week of ceremonies leading to Easter Sunday on April the 9th.
The Vatican says Pope Francis has a respiratory infection and will need to spend a few days in the hospital for treatment. The 86-year-old Pontiff has taken to Rome's Gemelli Hospital after complaining of breathing difficulties over the past few days, but had tested negative for COVID-19. U.S. President Joe Biden, while addressing Archbishop Elpidophoros Lambriniadis, the Archbishop of Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America, during a White House event commemorating Greek Independence Day, asked for an extra prayer for Pope Francis.
I want to say that I found that the 2 most Christ-like figures I've ever met were His All Holiness and the Pope. And they're friends. They've talked. The Pope has talked to me about the friendship. And the Pope is ill now, so say an extra prayer for him. But he still wonders why, as a Roman Catholic, I bless myself this way. And I've been hanging around. It's all your fault.
Worshippers during Mass at Almudena Cathedral in Madrid said a prayer for the Pontiff's recovery. Similarly, faithful in the Pope's Argentine hometown are praying for the Pontiff's speedy recovery. The Catholic community in Buenos Aires expressed their concern for the health of Pope Francis. Faithfuls are optimistic about the Pope's health and hoping that he would soon recover from his illness. However, nursing staff at the Rome's Gemelli Hospital are very optimistic that the Pope will be discharged just in time for Palm Sunday celebrations on April the 2nd.
United Arab Emirates President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan has appointed his eldest son, Sheikh Khalid, as Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, the oil-rich capital of the Gulf state, and named his brothers to top roles. Sheikh Mohammed named his brother Sheikh Mansour as UAE Vice President and Sheikh Taunoon the UAE's National Security Advisor. This appeared to further centralize power in Abu Dhabi, which is the political capital by virtue of its immense oil wealth of the UAE Confederation of 7 Emirates. The choice of Sheikh Khalid as Crown Prince reflects across most Arab monarchies lineage. French President Emmanuel Macron has said his government has a dialogue ongoing with trade unions over plans to change the pension system and raise the retirement age as he faces widespread protests against the planned reform. Tens of thousands marched in the streets of the French capital on Tuesday in the latest round of demonstrations to denounce President Emmanuel Macron's push to raise the retirement age by 2 years to 64, which was passed in Parliament without a vote. Millions of people have been demonstrating and joining strike action since mid-January to show their opposition to Mr. Macron's plans.
We know that there is dissent and opposition against the pension reform. That's why the Prime Minister, Elizabeth Borne, will meet with unions next week. And so there are movements that are allowed in the framework of our democracy, and there is dialogue that is ongoing. There are also time frames so that the democratic path of this bill can be achieved. There's social dissent against this reform, but that should not mean that everything should stop. That's normal. We are continuing our work because it's true that there are still problems of inflation. We have to reduce unemployment in our country. We have to have a response regarding the drought problem. We have to prepare for the coming seasons.
New Zealand Defence Minister Andrew Little says his country's military will require major investment as it faces new challenges and greater expectations from regional allies. The Defence Ministry says that it confirmed the White House's Indo-Pacific coordinator, Kurt Campbell, this month had raised with him the possibility of New Zealand becoming a non-nuclear partner of AUKUS, potentially signalling a further warming in relations between New Zealand and the United States. New Zealand, which spends roughly 1.5% of its GDP on its military, is undertaking a defense policy review as the country grapples with regional geopolitics and climate change.
No, it was raised by Kurt Campbell, and certainly keen to have New Zealand engaged, but it's not a decision I get to take alone. And that's, I think, as you know, the next few weeks, as we start to shape up some of the long-term questions for us. I mean, AUKUS will be one of them. In the end, AUKUS isn't our decision. It's Australia, US, and UK. In our maritime area, the Navy, we've got to think about the next generation of investments we're making, so some big decisions to make there. And all of that is in a rapidly changing context in our region and in the world. I think, when defence is expensive, that is not just looking after ourselves, but our relationships with our Pacific neighbours. We play a big role. We play a big role in humanitarian assistance and disaster recovery here and across the Pacific. So that is expensive. I think part of the challenge we've got over the next few years as we shape up these decisions is to talk more openly about, what do we expect of our defence forces? What are they there for? I think when you look at the geostrategic situation we have in the Pacific at the moment, I think the longer term challenge is that and our partners and neighbours will say to us, we expect more because more will be required. The frequency of climate change events, of weather events, will only grow. The intensity of them will only grow. And then there is working with partners to project a posture that I think is defensive of our neighbours and ourselves. And that will almost certainly require more effort. So more will be required of us, and that's one of the challenges we have to address.
Despite sustained public opinion in favour of gun restrictions, gun violence has been hotting up in recent years in the United States, with an increase in provoked widespread fears and down the country. A poll conducted in January last year found that about 64% of Americans believe U.S. democracy is in crisis and at the risk of failing.
We're talking about Iroquois, we're talking about Mohawks, we're talking about Pequots, we're talking about Sioux, we're talking about Seminoles, we're talking about Crees and Cherokees, etc. They all have a name. And they had a very well-organized society. So we wanted more land, and we kept encroaching on the lands of the indigenous. And when they started resisting, we started massacring them.
Clearly, America has a gun fetish. We embrace violence. Look at our movies. Look at our pop culture. Guns are everywhere, and they're glorified. They're held in higher esteem than many other things in our culture. And that's because of this notion of American rugged individualism. And this American myth is built on a lot of preconceived notions and on a lot of bad information. Guns typically are not the solution to these types of problems. Guns cause more problems. The NRA is still very influential, not necessarily from a campaign donor standpoint. They still hand out money a lot to Republicans and make sure that their voices are heard at Capitol Hill. But in terms of mobilizing voters.
Mexico Security Minister Rosa Isela Rodriguez says that prosecutors have identified 8 people who may be responsible for the deaths of 39 people caused by a fire at a detention center in the northern border city of Juarez. She said the people are 2 federal agents, a state migration officer, and 5 members of a private security firm. All the victims were male, and Mexico's government is under pressure to find out why they died after officials said the women migrants at the center were safely evacuated. However, Mexican prosecutors say they are investigating the incident as a possible homicide. Meanwhile, the White House has said the U.S. government officials have been in contact with Mexican authorities after that fire incident. Authorities believe the fire was started by migrants setting alight mattresses in an act of protest when they discovered they would be deported.
I'm going to also offer our condolences, a tragic loss of life that we saw in Mexico, devastating. I'm sure many of you have seen the video. It's heartbreaking. Our prayers, of course, are with those who lost their lives and their loved ones, of course, and those who are still fighting. There are many who are still fighting for their lives. We have been in touch with the Mexican officials on the ground, and they are working very seriously. Obviously, brings who have been injured and an individual trying to get them medical assistance right here in the United States. There's an investigation currently going on, so we'll let that investigation go through and not going to comment beyond that, but clearly we've been in touch with folks on the ground there.
Well, let's talk about politics in Myanmar. The United States has condemned the decision of Myanmar's ruling junta to abolish 40 political parties, including the former ruling party, National League for Democracy. State Department's deputy spokesperson, Vedant Patel, told reporters that any election without the participation of all stakeholders in Myanmar cannot be considered free or fair. Britain, Japan, and Australia all expressed concerns over the dissolution of Myanmar's foreign ruling party and even asked a more conclusive and inclusive process to return the country to democracy.
Simon, we strongly condemn the Burma military regime's decision to abolish 40 political parties, including, as you so noted, the National League for Democracy. Any election without the participation of all stakeholders in Burma would not be and cannot be considered free or fair. And given the widespread opposition to military rule, the regime's unilateral push towards elections likely will escalate instability. We continue to support efforts by all of those working to establish genuine and inclusive democracy in Burma.
Welcome back to the world today. The spokesperson for the Secretary General, Stefan Dujarric, has been updating journalists on the latest attacks by the armed Codeco group in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Speaking in New York, she said during the Codeco group attacks, the Ituri province's Jugu territory, 17 civilians were reportedly killed in 2 separate attacks.
Quick update from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where unfortunately there have been more attacks by armed groups, by the armed Codeco group. Over the weekend in Ituri province, Jugu territory, 17 civilians were reportedly killed in 2 separate attacks. The armed group also opened fire on UN peacekeepers and Congolese defense forces who were jointly conducting patrols to protect civilians around Jugu. During the incident, our peacekeepers and the Congolese military returned fire, prompting the assailants to flee. In the area of Drodro and Ro, southeast of Jugu, peacekeeping mission continued to respond to the persistent insecurity caused by Codeco. Our colleagues facilitated the transport of 28 civilians, mostly women, from Drodros to Ro site for internally displaced people. The mission also temporarily sheltered civilians at its base in Drodro following the attacks by Codeco at a nearby church. They also evacuated a man injured during the attack. Our colleagues in Kabul of the UN Assistance Mission in Afghanistan said that Machula Wessa, an advocate, a well-known advocate for girls' education and founder of the Pen Path, was arrested in Kabul on Monday. We call for the de facto authorities to clarify his whereabouts, the reasons for his arrest, and to ensure his access to legal representation as well as contact with his family. The UN mission also said it has been in contact with the relevant de facto authorities in Kabul regarding the case of Mr. Wessa, as well as other activists and journalists who remain in detention.
Well, if you trash it, it just might get picked up by a robot shark. Well, as you know, we're always looking for stories that impact the environment and, of course, climate change. A water shark is taking the job of a human by cleaning up plastic pollution from docks in London. It's designed to rid waterways of plastic waste and make sure that these plastics collected are recycled and reused. Take a look.
A robotic shark that gobbles up plastic waste has been let loose in London's docklands to clean up the water by removing the equivalent of more than 22,700 plastic bottles every day. According to its developers, the battery-powered electric catamaran called Waste Shark can travel up to 5 kilometers through water before needing a recharge and collect up to 500 kilograms of plastic and other pollutants as it guides itself through the water.
Waste Shark is a drone on water, and it's designed to sweep the surface of the water and collect trash, debris, biomass out of the water and return it back to land. When I originally came up with the idea, I was watching 2 guys in Cape Town in the harbour there where I was hanging out, and they were in a boat very much like the one we're in now, and they were using a net to take out the rubbish, which was great, but it seemed very inefficient. And I wanted to come up with something that could do that even while we weren't on the water in a boat. So while you were sleeping, we could find a robot that could do the job. And through various iterations, the first prototypes were absolutely awful. But to where we are now, we've landed with the Waste Shark and sending that around the world to clean up pollution in the water.
Waste Shark produces no carbon, noise or light pollution as it travels and poses no threat to wildlife.
We have two versions, one that can be remotely controlled or one that is autonomous, very similar to a vacuum cleaner you might have at home, one of these autonomous kind of vacuum cleaners or lawnmowers that we get now. And the idea is on the autonomous mode that it acts as a drone, so it literally sweeps around the water. You can go and do your job, come back, and it should be full, and you empty it and then you put it back in. It's got batteries inside it, so it's purely electric. And while it's running around, it's also measuring the water quality of the water as well. So our clients are not only sort of harvesting waste, but they're harvesting data as well.
The machines also collect data on water quality as they travel, sending back readings on turbidity, salinity, temperature, pH balance and depth of water. Waste sharks can be purchased for around $24,600 or leased for around $1,232 per month.
Let's come back to Africa. Inspired by the famous Paris-Dakar rally, organizers of the Senegal race wanted to create an event where women and men could compete on an equal footing. Now, Fatima Ba, who started this race 2 decades ago, can say she races men and wins. Here's this report.
Cheered on by her family, driver Fatimata Ba raises her arms in triumph after winning an amateur motor drag race in Dakar that saw 4 men and 4 women competing for first place. Earlier, pairs of drivers in small Peugeot hatchbacks had raced to make the best time on a makeshift track at the old airport in Dakar, part of the capital's first so-called Dakar Grand Prix in late February.
Usually they say women at the wheel, dead at the corner, which is an old adage. And today, I proved that that was not the case. And tomorrow, I'll do it again. I was first, and Nafisa came third. So the women didn't lose out. Being a woman or a man doesn't mean anything. This is the 21st century. Girl power.
Ba and other female drivers, one of whom placed third, are keen to challenge gender stereotypes in sometimes socially conservative Senegal and elsewhere.
I dedicate this trophy to my father and my husband, who have always supported me in this passion, which is usually reserved for men. This race is much more for the underprivileged children, for the needy children who need to smile and hope. This cup is to show them that everything is possible in life. With courage and perseverance, you can do it. I am happy.
Ba started racing 20 years ago after her father encouraged her to share his interest in cars. Her husband, mechanic Sheikh Tidiane Batley, is also her coach.
What I feel in these moments is pride for me and joy for her, because I know this is something she loves. To have won after all the effort it took, frankly, it was very satisfying. I acted nice because there were other guys there, telling everyone that she's my wife. It makes you proud.
Ba donated her winnings to the SOS Children's Village organization, where she's worked since quitting banking.
And finally on the program, auction house Sotheby's says that a dazzling pink diamond, described as the most vivid pink diamond to ever come to the market, could fetch more than $35 million when it goes under the hammer in New York on June the 8th. Senior Vice President for the Luxury Division, Frank Everett, said the diamond's pink and purple hues make it unlikely as any other diamond he's ever seen. According to Everett, pink diamonds are incredibly rare.
But that expanse of flawless pink diamond all the way to the edges of that beautiful cushion outline, it's incredible. 10.57 carats. And we expect it to fetch more than $35 million. You can't underestimate the rarity of coming across a stone this clear and this intense or vivid in terms of the color at this size. This is almost unheard of. To cross over the 10 carat mark is incredible, to find something internally flawless and this beautifully saturated.
say diamond is a woman's best friend. And that's where we draw the cuttings on today's edition of The World Today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. Please stay safe.